The US President Joe Biden has authorised Ukraine to use American long-range missiles to strike targets deep inside Russia.
Until now, Mr Biden has been reluctant to give permission because of concerns about the conflict escalating. Our correspondent David Willis reports now from Washington.
The aftermath of the latest missile attack on Ukraine, Russia's largest in months. This, the city of Sumy, near the Russian border, after a missile hit a residential area, killing 10 people and injuring many more. As President Biden arrived in Rio for the G20 summit, reports emerged of new US measures to help Ukraine defend itself. Authorization from the outgoing leader for the use of long-range, American-made guided missiles capable of striking deep into Russian territory. Potentially a significant development in the conflict, and one President Zelensky has been calling for months.
Today,
many in the media say that we have received permission to take appropriate actions. But strikes are not made with words. Such things are not announced. The missiles will speak for themselves, definitely.
President Biden's decision followed the arrival last month of around 10,000 North Korean special forces sent to help Russia reclaim territory lost to Ukraine in the Kursk region of eastern Russia. Known as ATACMS, these US Army tactical missile systems have a range of almost 200 miles and are difficult to intercept because they travel at such high speeds. President Biden is keen to do all he can to help Ukraine in the little time he has left in office. He'd resisted authorizing the use of American long-range missiles up to now for fear of antagonizing Russia. But with winter approaching and Russia advancing, retaining territory taken in the east could provide Ukraine with a bargaining chip in the event of future peace talks. David Willis, BBC News, Washington.
We can go live to Ukraine now, speak to our diplomatic correspondent Paul Adams, who joins us from Dnipro in the east of the country. Paul, how could these American missiles change the course of the war?
Well, I think we shouldn't get ahead of ourselves. Will they change the course of the war? Probably not, but they are a significant new development, probably one of the most significant changes in US policy in the last year or so. Initially, we understand they are going to be used only in the Kursk region. That is the area inside Russia that Ukrainian forces have held since August. And I think it's an indication that Washington is happy to allow or to assist Ukraine to hold on to that territory, possibly ahead of peace negotiations sometime next year. What the ATACMS can do is that they can attack targets deep inside Russia, the kind of logistics and support facilities that the Russians need to mount an effective counteroffensive in Kursk. It will probably complicate their efforts and complicate the use of the North Korean troops too, because this is a pretty fearsome weapon capable of doing a great deal of damage. And so I think the hope is that this will make it possible for the Ukrainians to cling on there in Kursk for the time being. The Ukrainians obviously hope that they will be able to use it more widely in the future, perhaps in other parts of the eastern front line. But it's worth bearing in mind that the Ukrainians don't have a huge number of these missiles, so they're going to have to use what they have pretty carefully. And the other thing that Pentagon officials have been pointing out for weeks now is that the Russian planes that carry the bombs, the glide bombs that do so much damage to the Ukrainian front line, those aircraft are now based well outside the range of the ATACMS, even further inside Russia. So it's unlikely that it'll have an effect on that side of the military campaign.
Paul, it's coming up to 3 years now since the start of this conflict. For people there where you are who are living on the ground, living through this day by day, how might this change from America change their mood?
Yeah, it's almost 1,000 days. It'll be 1,000 days tomorrow since the full-scale invasion. We had a pretty grim series of reminders yesterday of what Russia is capable of, as many as 20 people killed in the course of the day. And so, in one sense, you know, the grim realities of this war are ever present. the kind of technical, theoretical possibility of a new weapon system to change the course of the war feels probably to most Ukrainians like a rather distant prospect. But certainly in Kyiv, in government circles and military experts that we've spoken to, they feel that while this is unlikely to kind of somehow miraculously unlock a Ukrainian victory, it will restore some balance. It'll make life more difficult for Vladimir Putin, and it'll enable the Ukrainians to plan their efforts with a bit more confidence. So it is going to be a big morale boost. It's something that they've been wanting for a very, very long time. But I don't think anyone here is kidding themselves that somehow the war has just got a little shorter.
Paul Adams in Ukraine, thank you very much indeed. And this issue likely to dominate big international talks which are taking place today, Sal.
Absolutely right, John, because Keir Starmer says shoring up support for Ukraine will be at the top of his agenda at the G20 summit of world leaders in Brazil. Our chief political correspondent, Henry Zeffman, joins us now to talk about this. So, morning, Henry. What will the Prime Minister be hoping for?
Morning, Sally. Well, Keir Starmer made that comment you referenced about shoring up support for Ukraine at the start of his flight to Brazil. And then midway through his journey to Brazil, the news broke of that US change of policy on missiles you were just discussing, which we are expecting the UK to follow suit on, although we haven't had any formal comment yet. And clearly that means Ukraine is even more at the centre of this summit's agenda. Remember, this is the last major summit that will take place before Donald Trump becomes US president. He perhaps has a little more mercurial, shall we say, approach to Ukraine and to this war. So Keir Starmer will be trying to corral like-minded leaders together to ensure Ukraine has what it needs at the start of this winter. But it's not just Ukraine on his agenda. He's also going to hold a meeting with Xi Jinping, the leader of China. Now, what is especially significant about that is that Keir Starmer will be the first Prime Minister since Theresa May, way back in January 2018, met Xi Jinping. I mean, we've had 5 prime ministers here in the UK since then. And among those 5 prime ministers, policy has hardened towards China bit by bit over Hong Kong, over Taiwan, over other human rights issues. Keir Starmer's view is that he can have a serious and pragmatic discussion with Xi Jinping. China is, after all, still the UK's 5th biggest trading partner. So an awful lot of geopolitics for this still relatively new Prime Minister playing out in Brazil over the next few days.
Henry, thank you.